And again, thinking through again how that works in practice within any one part of the city. How can we contribute to making the city more sustainable? What does that mean in any particular place or site within the city? As Bob says, that's a key part of this challenge that you've been set, is to think about the nature of sustainability and how you translate those broad agendas and put that into a spatial context. But cities are also about people, and it has to be safe. It has to be a place where people want to be, and it has to reflect their values. And in the case of Tshwane, they call that an open and honest city, one that recognises that it's not perfect, one that recognises that inequalities exist, and indeed, in many cases, are perhaps even reinforced through some of the actions of design in the city. But it wants to be one where at least there can be debate and discussion. What does that mean, therefore, for people in their neighbourhoods? How can you contribute to that? What does democracy mean in the context of your design of a city centre? But above all else, Tshwane has set out its agenda as being a new African capital city. It's, as it very proudly says in its latest plan, written just a couple of years ago, it's got really good ambitions about how it wants to position itself in a global context, not just actually within Africa, but more broadly. And so claims like, for example, it's the third largest city in area, or it's got the largest concentration of foreign diplomatic missionaries after Washington, all reinforce this notion that a capital city is a place where government, business, people want to live together, have to work together. And so how do you translate that notion of this capital into a particular site? Or maybe you don't. But it's certainly one of the things that we've learned as we've been working with Tshwane over the years, that this is the driving force behind the broad design and approach to urban development within the whole of the region. And housing, of course, is a critical part of that. Indeed, one of the things that we've noted about Tshwane, Pretoria downtown, is that although there are housing developments, there are an absence of enough housing, sufficient housing, and housing that is in quality in order to be able to meet people's needs. How can you create, therefore, a compact, mixed-use, transient served neighbourhoods? Or should we be doing that? One of the questions that the Future City Centre Network has been looking at is how much the city centre should be one where we have transient populations living only for a short period of time and then moving elsewhere. Or how important is it to have a more long-term neighbourhood, ones where there are different age groups, different demographics, different experiences, different economic positions brought together? Is that what we need within a neighbourhood? Again, something for you to think about, and perhaps not something that Pretoria-Tshwane has at the moment. In our chapter in our book, we concluded our analysis of looking at Tshwane of some of the key possible responses that we thought were key design elements of the city centre and its future. 5 areas: the environment, society, economics, politics, and culture on the left-hand side there, and some actions on the right-hand side that suggest how you might respond to that. This was our take of the city as centre as a whole. But I think a lot of these things are particular, not just to the city centre, but to individual sites of opportunities for development within the city. How can some of these things be brought to bear in the design that you would suggest for the site that you hear later from Francine? Perhaps at the bottom is the one that I think you want to draw attention to. It's about this sense of place and identity. Each city in the world has similar challenges, but they have different responses. the uniqueness of the city centre, the identity that each city has is something that is reflected in the architecture, the design, the layout, not just of the historic buildings, not just the church square, the markets, etc., but individual houses, individual places where people live. How can you get that sense of identity across? And if so, what sort of identity? We suggest that's under the heading of culture, and that heritage is part of it, but new build has an element of that as well, because new build is itself going to be something that matters in the future. Going to remember that in the next over 20 or 30 years, about 70% of everything, of every city that's already built will still exist at that time. So what you design today has to have some longevity in terms of its culture and identity. So let me come to just a few thoughts for you to think about some of the broad challenges and then how you might respond to that in the competition based around the work we've done. Well, first of all, I think there's the challenge that, as we all know, the new city of Tshwane, as declared in the last couple of years, is enormous in its spatial extent. And it risks losing the idea of being a single city. There are new builds on the edges. The city centre is no longer as appealing. How can you respond to that in a downtown site? You have an opportunity to design something. How can you give an identity and connection with place? How can you make the city centre appealing as a location for people to live? So what does that mean in terms of housing? That's for you to think through, but it matters because in the end, if we cannot get that right in the city centre, then we're going to have the remaining challenges that are faced here, in particular the one where services and government functions, which have traditionally been the downtown on the centre of Tshwane, are at risk of being dispersed, meeting the needs over the edge of and cities as they expand outwards from the city centre. How can you build that in? What do you need to think about those elements as part of your neighbourhood build? And then finally, reinforcing the point that Bob made earlier, we're not looking for standardisation in design and construction. That's not appealing. What is it that could be different? What can make this site and what you develop on the site, design on the site, has been something different that captures some of these elements that Tshwane is talking about. So let me conclude with just two more thoughts. First of all, a statement that's been made actually in the United Kingdom, but we think is applicable to almost every city centre. Globally, we're looking for different solutions. What's been tried before hasn't worked in every case. So what is it that could be more sophisticated, more sustained solutions? And how can that be generated through integration and a more holistic approach between different partners and different solutions? Think about what disciplines in architecture and beyond can be part of that conversation. And how can you make that work within the context of a capital city? Well, 4 dimensions that perhaps capture what I've just been saying that we think matter for a city centre itself. The economics matter. They need to be there. They need to attract people on the basis of jobs and employment. There needs to be opportunities. That is increasingly seen to be needing to be local. You don't travel too much. You don't have to be working elsewhere in the city itself. That could be homework, but it could also be a local workshops. It could be other opportunities there in the neighbourhood. There needs to be housing. The central part of what we're putting forward here is about the housing and affordability. But it also needs to be this sense of space, that sense of place rather, the identity. How do you make a neighbourhood? How do you make something work to fit within the city itself? And finally, perhaps the last thought for all of us is that city centres are traditionally dense places. And indeed, one of the arguments until recently has been that densification is the route way to success in the city centre. That comes with a price. The loss of open space, the loss of public realm is something that is associated, unfortunately, with densification. So I'd like you to think about how you make sure that there's still opportunities to have these open spaces, places where people can meet, and making that part of the sense of place for the area itself. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Great, thank you, Robert. So can we move on now with Francine to talk about the site and the context?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen, Prof. Bob?
Yes, can see it now, yes.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, that's great, Francine. Yep.
About this competition. Here we go. I've been asked to take you through the site very quickly. I'm a native Pretorian. Well, not native. I've lived here for 2 decades. So the first note I'd like to say, if in the past 40 minutes you've heard the word Tshwane, just know that our esteemed colleagues from the UK are actually referring to Tshwane. Tshwane as in the city of Tshwane or Tshwane University of Technology. So I'm going to quickly start and take you through the site. We're going to start with the location, the relationship within the city center, the relationship within the surroundings, the features of this specific site, as well as possibilities for development. Now, I'm going to cover possibilities for development right now. The city of Tshwane has demarcated the site for housing, especially the open part of it. So further research, we've decided to not include the city of Tshwane specifics. So for this competition, you focus on the fact that housing and any other accommodation that you would like to include in addition to housing to make the housing more effective would be great. Now, the site is located in South Africa, which is fantastic, seeing as the schools that are participating all come from South Africa. And then if we zoom in, we go to Gauteng, which is the densest populated province within South Africa. And to the north of Gauteng, or within Gauteng, is the city of Tshwane. And the city of Tshwane has a metropolitan municipality area, and within that is Pretoria. Now, there's a lot of talk as to where exactly Pretoria ends and where it starts. So these red lines that you see on your screen from the Google Earth images is actually what is currently captured on Google Earth. And if we go into the Pretoria area and we ask for the Pretoria Central area, then this is actually the map. Currently, I have a good friend who works at the Department of Public Works, and I asked her to look over this demarcation of this current Google information. And she actually said, no, they're changing it again to include Solvukop as well. So please note that the Pretoria Central area, it does change, it does fluctuate, and it leaves our site just outside. If you see that red dot there, that red, pointer is a good word. So if I take the site and I then just extract all the lines for an area, then this is Church Square, right in the middle, the historic center of the city, where Paul Creer and Church Street at the time, currently it's Tonder to the east, have intersected. And if you look, this is the Union Buildings. It was designed by Sir Herbert Baker, and at the beginning of the 20th century, these were built, and this is situated on Mankieskop. And right in between those two, we have our site. So this is then the Pretoria Central demarcation, and in the green to the right there is the site. If we go a bit closer, you will see that there is an amended brief online, which you can download with this amended Pretoria Central demarcation. So if we look at the site again on Google Earth, we will see here it is situated. between the Union buildings and between Church Square. And if we go to the site, for those of you who are not located or residents of Pretoria or from Pretoria or studying in Pretoria, I really do recommend that you go onto Google Earth and that you look at all the amenities and all the uses around the site. The most prominent, of course, is the Opis River Canal, but also Nelson Mandela, the city center to the west, and then residential areas such as Arcadia and Sunnyside to the east, but also university departments, the Tshwane University of Technology Arts Campus, and Arcadia Campus, mosque into the city, a lot of churches in the surround, amenities, facilities, hospitals. Please do take a look and familiarize yourself with the site. Now, if we look towards the east, you will see the site there in the center. You have Mankieskop there in the Union buildings. If you look to the south, you have Makkelneek, Sunnyside, out towards Unisa. If you look to the west, you have the city center. And if you look to the north, you have the Moot, large residential area and expanse. You can see a red line there demarcating Arcadia. So the site is actually located within Arcadia, and you will see Sunnyside. And if we look at a 3D, you will see that this is a densely populated residential areas with medium to high rise residential buildings and lower density residential buildings and green space and educational green space as well. So let's quickly look at the site again. I personally think upon visiting the site, the most prominent feature of this site is actually the Opis River Canal. It cuts right through the site and it provides a lot of opportunities, but also it provides a kind of a scar at the moment because it's underutilized. The surrounding sites or the adjacent sites to this Opis River Canal does not feed into it. The river has been made a canal for quick, efficient flow of water, as opposed to actually harvesting the water, as opposed to actual placemaking. This is Lions Bridge, which is actually one street down towards Stanza-Bopape, one street to the south. And if we look at the site, some of you might have accessed already some of the site photos that we've taken, Prof. Jeremy, myself, and a friend, Pieter Groenewald. We visited the site. We captured some drone footage for you that we've posted on the Google Drive files. The link is on the brief and on the amended brief. But if I were to stand on this corner, this is a two-photo compilation of this Opis River. If I were to stand on the southwest corner of the site, you will see that there is a memorial here. And that, as per most spaces within the city center, this becomes an unused space or a used space for unhoused people. But once again, we have an opportunity to actually provide housing. And then the urban space becomes decayed. It becomes a negative space where I wouldn't want to take my niece and nephew here to play situation. If we stand on this corner and look across the road, you will see Nelson Mandela Avenue here. Usually this is a very busy city center area with a tremendous amount of cars, but these photos were taken very early on a Sunday morning, when most people, it's the best time to visit the city if you want to see the morphology of the city rather than be overwhelmed by people. And then on this corner as well, you'll see that this is the open part of the site, which is included in your site against Nelson Mandela. You'll see Prof. Jeremy there in the red to the left, and you will see that this is quite an unkept area. There's a lot of trash, a lot of garbage, and unhoused people as well, as is the case with most of Tshwane, most of Pretoria. If we stand on the corner of Nelson Mandela Drive and Johannes Ramukwatse Street, then this is what that corner looks like. You can see that the garbage and the trash goes into the Opis River, which is unfortunate because this is a natural feature of the site that could be utilized quite extensively towards sustainability. And here's looking down. If I stood against the wall there, this is where we took the drone footage from, for those of you who have already accessed the drone footage. And looking at the site, you will see that you can't actually visually access it. There seems to be a dune sort of situation. And then this open site, which you can see on the drone footage, that is hidden away from the street at this time. And then on the corner of Johannes Ramakotse and Okkertse Street, we have a lot of taxis, public transport, and once again, it looks like almost a dumping site for vegetation or refuge from gardens and refuge from bins that haven't been picked up. Here you can see we are looking right into Okkertse Street, which is a level lower than the site and actually doesn't have that much traffic. It's almost a serviceable street, it has a lot of potential. Personally, I think it has potential for access to workshops, especially where you don't usually want deliveries, access for pedestrians, where there isn't that a high frequency of vehicular movement. So Okkertse Street is a very interesting little street. And as we walk down, you will see to the left of your screen, those are actually workshops that open up into Okkertse Street. And it is almost lovely. The fact that people work there, that they are active there, it provides activity on the street, it animates the facade. And it's sad that we have these precast concrete barriers here. These barriers were actually put in place because this area became occupied by trash collectors. Trash collectors who trade amongst each other. Now, as we all know, in society, in South African society, I personally think trash collectors are the only people that actually contribute positively towards sustainability because of the recycling activities they do. So it's a shame that also for them, the site was barricaded off. And then going all round back to Madiba Street, here you can see Madiba Street again. So when you access the site photos online, please note that I took the photos as we walked around the site. So please be cognizant of that. And then this is an existing building on the site. It is a motor dealership. It is low density commercial use with the workshops behind it. You can choose for yourself whether you would like to demolish this or make it a part of your site. That decision is yours. Obviously, there are two arguments to it. One, it's not dense enough and therefore not sustainable. Two, we shouldn't break down anything because then we should rebuild it, and keeping it is also sustainable. So whatever your argument is, it's fine. The choice is yours. Then, if we look at a quick, I wonder if this will play. It will start in 5 minutes. I took the drone footage and I just sped it up a bit. So it will play in 2 minutes. Here you can see the site behind the barricades. There you can see the Apis River canal. There you can see a person walking very, very fast because the video has been sped up. And you can see that there's a lot of trash and decay. And the site is a scar, very close to the city center, but it's also a lost opportunity. There's a great opportunity cost for not utilizing this site, and especially not utilizing it for housing. Here you can see Okkertse Street, down to Johannes there. You can almost see into the warehouses there, or the workshops there, which I'm not sure is good for privacy. So here you can see that even though from the street you cannot see the site is definitely there, and it's in extremely close proximity to the city center. And there's a lot happening around it. It has so much activities. Of the 3 sites we considered for the competition, this one had the most flavor. It had the most activities around it, the most connections, public transport connections as well. If you look at the slide with the tag switched on from Google Earth, bus routes, it's close to railway, it's close to residential areas and the city. And yeah, here we go. And the site is also very, very large. It's deceptively large. If you look at it, if you include the Apis River part of it, it is almost a 2-hectare site, which calls for quite a bit of density. And then there we go. Just a quick few notes from my side as well. Please do go and look at the City Centre Sustainable Design Housing Competition workshop site. You will see that we have a brief uploaded here, a revised brief with the new images in, also stipulating that even though we do prefer groups to participate, we will accept submissions from one person, should that be the case. And then please do go to the CIB website and join the newsletter. I myself can tell you that joining the CIB has given me quite a few academic connections that I otherwise would not have had. And then look over the commissions and the task groups as well and join us. Please join my commission along with Prof. Bob for architectural design and management. And if your interest lies with Prof. Jeremy's commission, Smart and Sustainable Built Environments, I'm considering joining that commission as well. And then, of course, Prof. P.D. Roy-Lamila's commission, Construction in Developing Countries. Whenever he looks at anything, any research I've produced, he keeps on saying to me, Takumina, you must join my commission. That is where you should be. So please do go and take a look. And that is me, a quick run through the site. If there are any questions, now is a good time.
Okay, thank you. That's great, Francine. Thanks. So, yes, it's over to everybody who is here. To ask whatever you'd like to ask and discuss whatever you'd like to discuss. Jeremy, is there anything on the chat that we should take care of first?
There's one question from Sidi. UKZN students had a problem accessing the site photos. The links didn't work. Can we have this sorted out after the workshop, please? So that's the one comment I see here.
From my side, absolutely. Please do drop a mail to the email on the brief if the problem persists. But I will once again, I will check that the access is available to everyone with the link. So please do check, and if the problem persists, please do email the email address on the brief. Yeah.
Okay, I see, I think Anchor has a hand up.
Hello, so I'm one of the team members in Anchor's group, joining from Johannesburg currently. I was kindly asking, since this session is currently being recorded, where would we be able to find the recordings?
Right, well, the plan is that everything goes onto the SharePoint that I gave you the link to at the beginning. Is that
Thank
okay?
you so much.
There's another question that's come up from Judith. Thank you for the presentation. How do we... Judith, I think, do you want to just share your question? I'm not quite sure what it's referring to.
I think I do know what it's referring
to. Okay.
Yeah, we're just wondering, how do we enter the competition? Is there a tag or something that we need to do that?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good question. As per the brief, and you're welcome to download the revised brief as well, tags will be issued to all of the schools. I'm issuing spreadsheets with 20 tags per school. In case more is needed, more will be issued. But should you be a lone ranger that is submitting a submission, even though this is not part of your third-year syllabus, then please do email the email address on the brief and ask for a tag for your group. Because we do know that not all of the schools have had the opportunity to include this within their syllabus. So one or two participants might not receive a tag from their studio masters or their studio coordinators, in which case they should email us. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. But I do have a follow-up question in that we are from the UKZN and we have our third-year students may not be able to enter the competition, but we want to send in submissions from our second-year students. Would that be acceptable?
It's not something we've discussed, but I can't see any reason why not. Francine, Jeremy, are you happy with that?
From my side, I would be reluctant to accept fourth-year students because they are more advanced. But second-year students, absolutely. I can't see that anybody else will say that's unfair. In fact, they have less experience than third-year students. So I'm also all for taking their submissions and giving them a chance.
Yeah. Jeremy, you okay with that?
Good.
Yep. Okay. So the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Judith, please email me so that I can send out tags for your second-year students as well. And thank you for participating in the competition. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
Looking for questions. I'm looking for hands up. Or I think use the chat if you'd prefer. Just type something in the chat. Otherwise, we've got plenty of time. So I think do put your hand up and ask questions. Okay, I see one from Victor. Can we get the link to the SharePoint?
Yes, it was on the first slide, Victor.
But Victor, we can also put it in the chat. If it's possible, Prof. Bob, someone might not have been able to click on the slide and have not been able to copy and paste the URL. So if it is possible to put it in the chat, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. I'll put it somewhere, certainly.
Fantastic. Yeah. So Victor, we'll get that out to you.
Okay, so we need a URL to be pasted into the, a clickable URL.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think that's the other comment, that there's a link that doesn't seem to link through. So yeah.
There's another question on the chat as well. There's someone asking, will our second-year students be disadvantaged in any way? Will they be disqualified for not being in third year? I think, Naresh, we've just been confronted with the same question from Judith, as in, can second-year students participate? And we've just decided between Prof. Bob and Prof. Jeremy that, yes, you can participate. So, Naresh, please do email the address on the brief, the email address, the Gmail, and ask that you be sent tags as well for the amount of students or the amount of groups that you have. So definitely, I do not foresee that you will be disqualified or disadvantaged in any way. It won't happen.
Yeah, I've just clicked onto the first slide, and it does open the SharePoint link, but we'll give you another way of getting there in case that doesn't work.
If Prof. Bob, if you are willing to click on the SharePoint link and then go to the URL at the top, select that and copy paste it into the chat, then it will help us all a lot to also access SharePoint.
Yeah, whether I'm up to doing that is another question, but I'll see if I can.
We have faith.
Okay, there is a Tobatsi has a hand raised, and there's a comment. So let's start with Tobatsi.
Hi there. I just wanted to say thank you guys for the presentation. I just wanted to ask with regards to the structure of the prizes, would the first, second, and third prize be exclusive from the other categories that you guys have listed, or are they somehow all inclusive?
Well, to be quite honest, that's up to the judges. You know, if they feel that a particular project is overall one of the top three, and it also meets another category, then you know, that will be their decision to award, you know, 2 prizes to a particular project. I mean, I think ideally it would be preferable to spread the prizes amongst different proposals, but it would be totally up to the judges that which they decide to do.
All right, thank you so much.
That answers your question. We have another one in the comments from DJ Raj. In terms of density of residents, what is the aimed for density per hectare?
That's a very good question. But I personally think we are looking forward to what you propose the density should be.
Yes.
We're looking for, because if we dictate too much, it's going to cripple your good ideas. So that is one of the, and we expect a lot of entries with a lot of different densities.
Yes. Yeah, can I make a couple of points about that? One is that what we're really looking for is variety. What we're really looking for is a range of ideas. So there's no stereotypical solution to this. There's no thought in mind about what we are wanting to see. What we want to see is people's ideas. What we want to see is combinations of different studies with different designs. So what I said at the beginning is what we're not going to do is we're not going to specify how many housing units we want. We're not going to specify what the density should be. We're not going to specify anything of that kind of nature. But it's for you to express what you think would be the best in generating a place that people would like to live in and maybe work in as well.
No, I agree 100%.
I think just to add to that, I think if you recall from the presentations, this is being run by the CIB, which is a research organization. So I like the level of detail and the interest in kind of quantitative aspects. So I think that's quite important. And I think part of what you need to share is some of the kind of science behind your proposals. So I think, that if you look at the brief, there's some quite interesting hints in terms of what you might want to do to propose and provide evidence that your particular solution is optimal for that particular site. I see there was a hand up.
Can I just make another comment about that, Jeremy? But please also remember that it's about the use of outside space as well as inside space. And that's something we'll come on to in future workshops. Sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, okay. No, thank you. Any others before I go on to some of the detail from the, okay, so here we go. From Nadine is the email for the tags CIB City Centre Sustainable Design @gmail.com. I see Francine has answered it. So yes, it is. So that's the email. And I think if you're having any trouble, send an email through to that. And I think Francine will probably be the person who will respond. Yeah. So I think use that email.
Robert, you had your hand up and a question and you were waving. Sorry to interrupt.
I was just going to add a comment, I think, to the question on density, and really, you've all made the point. I think there's no right answer here. I think the question you have is to think about in terms of density. Is it density is only one metric, one way of measuring something that looked at in terms of design, and it's always got to be placed alongside other elements. Bob talked about, how do you have density and space at the same time? But you could have lots of dense, you can have lots of dense development, and densification is one of the agendas of city centres. But if it doesn't create spaces of interaction, it doesn't create neighbourhoods, it doesn't encourage social interactions, then you begin, the densification is actually helpful or not, because lots of people live there, but they don't actually interact there. So I think, as Jeremy says, one of the challenges is to think through and explain why you've got certain types of densification. What density do you think works, and works for what purposes? It's a challenge that all cities are facing, and many cities around the world have just almost blindly taken on the challenge of increasing density without necessarily following through in terms of what that means for a site development and for neighbourhood and neighbourliness or social connectedness, if you want to call it that.
Couldn't
Okay,
agree
no,
more.
thanks, Robert. We've got another question on the chat from Brian. Apart from the auto dealership, how far are we allowed to interact or alter the surrounding areas to the site? Does anyone want to have a go at that?
I'll have a go at that. That's an extremely interesting question, because obviously we are hoping that this development will make waves into the surround as well. However, Brian, you have limited time and limited page space. So yes, sure, show us what happens around and show us what impact or how you might take from or give to the surrounding, but also focus on the brief. Because if you have great ideas, try to win a prize first. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bob, do you want to?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I had a question from one of the tutors who I think was an urban design tutor, and said, how much can we consider the design of the area? And I said, well, as an urbanist, I'm very keen on the whole, surroundings. But as somebody who's running a competition, please focus on the site and what you're aiming to do with it.
No, so anything goes, but also address what is being asked.
Yeah.
All right. I see another one from Kanya. Are the users also up to us to identify and specify? So I presume this is a question about the users, so the occupants, who will be living there, who will be working there. So that's the question. Are they up to us to identify and specify?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think the answer there is yes. I mean, obviously, there's a context, and to give kind of full detail to your proposal, it would make sense to identify and explain who you see as your users. So thank you. Does that answer your question, Kanya? Do you have a follow-up one? You can raise your hand. Yes, it does. Okay. Okay. How do you? There's another one, Greta. Maybe raise your hand and talk, because I think you've got half a question here.
Sorry, no problem, Greta. We have time. We have time.
I accidentally typed enter, and then the question went through.
Okay.
It was even halfway through the sentence. But I was just wondering, with the Arpies River and the canal, how, because that's a very a prominent part of the site, how with the material of the canal, and how should we approach that? How limited are we to say okay, so for say if you wanted to be okay, let's remove this but keep the river, but we have a better approach in terms of materiality or stuff like that, what would be the best way or the limitations to the
Greta, currently that canal is not working. If you have a better idea, please give it to us. Please give us your better ideas. We want them. Yeah.
Okay.
Bob,
I think it's also, it's taking up a lot of space as well, especially on the surface. So anything you can do to redesign it to make it much more of an amenity would be gratefully received.
Yeah, I agree.
So just to respond, I think, Greta, we aren't prescriptive. It's about imagination. It's about alternatives. It's very much an ideas competition. There are many rivers. I hesitate to call them a river. Very similar to that in many cities. And part of what you're going to try and address is thinking through what we do and how we make those work better as architects. So good question, but we haven't got any answers for you.
No, please give us the answer.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank
please.
you.
You must
Okay.
give us the answer. You're not agreed.
Are you fine with that, Greta?
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. There's another one, DJ Raj. Will the design be limited in terms of height and size according to the city building scheme? Francine, do you want to start?
I will happily take that one. Of course, the answer is we have a housing problem in South Africa and things aren't working. So I will be, from my personal point of view, I would be so thankful if someone were to challenge what is being dictated by government and being dictated by the city building scheme. So from that premise, I would say, no, do give us the ideas of what you think should be best. Yeah.
So Bob, do you want to comment on that? Or Robert?
Yeah.
I see Robert is that a thumbs up?
Well, I'm sure Robert will say something as well, but I just wanted to say that the things you need to consider, is about how you engender a community, how people relate to each other, and how they relate to the outside as well. So it's about thinking, you need to be relatively close to the ground to be able to deal with things in that way. And when we're not getting involved in a lot of sort of mechanical equipment, so we're not having lifts or anything. So you've got to think, well, what's a sensible height for people to walk up? I'll come back to a number of these issues when I look at the design of housing in a future workshop. Robert, did you want to?
Yeah, Robert, I think.
I mean, I think your question on the Raj is an excellent one, because in some ways, I think one of the elements of not just this competition, but more generally about how we're responding to agendas in cities has been one where to say, well, the city building schemes and the size and regulations that are in place are there to be challenged. And they're there to be challenged because actually cities want to be innovative. So it's not you just challenge it for the sake of challenging. It's giving an explanation as to why a challenge to it might be worthy of consideration. And we're seeing across many cities, particularly in their city centres, there's a willingness to be flexible in terms of the building codes and designs and regulations where there's a rationale behind it. So I think if you come up with a rationale, I can imagine the judges will be very impressed as to why you might be saying, well, there's something different to what the city government thinks is the most important.
Yeah, so I think the really important point that's coming back, I hope, to all of you is the idea of that there must be a very clear rationale for your choice. So the rules are fairly minimal in terms of what we're asking for, but you need to have a very strong rationale and be able to explain it and show it very clearly. I think there's two issues here. One is that obviously there's a response to this site in terms of densities and heights, etc. And the other is this idea of it being a replicable model. And I think both of those issues you should look at is if we had many sites doing the same thing, would the city work? And just look at that and see, what your response is. But I think the really important point here is the rationale, is to explain it very clearly and provide the evidence for why you think it's the best possible solution.
Yeah.
I agree. Absolutely.
Another quick question on my side is, how would we go about the presentation side of things? Because so far we'll be submitting an A1 page or slide, and basically with the limited space that we have, how would we go about mentioning I know we have diagrams that we can also add on in terms of trying to explain our design, but there are some things which we really want to challenge. And it's not easy just to explain those elements just through the A1 page. So I was kindly asking, how do you go about basically presenting those challenges and basically what you're challenging within the entire project?
No, thank you very much. I know Francine is going to be very keen to answer that.
I'm definitely. Anke's partner in crime obviously asked the question, but I'll refer to Anke. It's a very limited space to present your ideas. One A1 sheet portrait is very limited space, and there are reasons for this. One, we want to be able to print all your work. Two, we have one large exhibition hall to pin it up in, and we want to pin up all the work. We don't just want to choose the 10 best. We want to feature all of them for the judges to consider. But then the next answer to your question is, I've got a library here full of architectural books, and any one of them that I take, they are about an A4 size. And within that architectural book, I can open up and I can see site plans at very small scale, or sections and elevations at very small scale. So it is possible to have 12 A4 sheets and present quite concisely a large project. It just takes planning from your side. And in addition to that planning, it also restricts you from going into too much detail. On a 2-hectare site, I personally don't want you to focus on details unless it is a part of your approach to materiality or building systems or innovation. I want to personally see your ideas. So that's the reasons for the limitation. And then those who plan the best will be able to execute it the best. Another point, and just another piece of advice from my side, always apply the 5 meter or the 10 meter, 2 meter rule. A person standing 2 meters from your proposal or from your presentation should be able to read what is there from 2 meters or a meter away. And then from 10 meters away, you want to capture the judge's attention. You really do. So do remember that approach as well, that wow factor from afar, but also the legibility from close up.
Okay, thanks, Francine. Bob, do you want to say anything? Or
yeah, I agree all of that, and I think that you know, the design of your sheet is part of the challenge, and I think it's about how you present information concisely, how you actually get your main points across and don't get lost in a lot of detail, and it is about impact. I mean, you're going to be in a room, you know, with a lot of other proposals. So why should they look at yours? You know, what is it about yours that's going to grab their attention?
So I think just to make the kind of last comment on that, it's an ideas competition. So you also should have ideas about how you present and communicate ideas. And it's not about cramming as much architectural detail in conventional drawings on a sheet of paper that you can. You might want to experiment with diagrams, with different ways of presenting and communicating ideas. So have a think about that and see what comes through. There's another question here from Karishma. In terms of the brief, there was much emphasis on the aspect of affordability. Is there a limitation that we should consider when designing? Bob, do you want to start
can
with
I come back to that? Because, you know, I'm very keen that you're not limited by the notion of affordability. We said affordability because we wanted to create a community and because we didn't want it to be an exclusive kind of development. But I think we should be pushing the bounds of affordability. You know, I think it was Jeremy that mentioned, you know, how, you know, these things can be replicated. Robert was saying, you know, about how it can be a model. I think that your notion of affordability, you know, should not limit what you do. We're looking for exciting, interesting proposals that have justification, that have other aspects associated with them. You know, whether it's a place for, you know, work as well as living, where it's a place that you grow food, whether it's a place that you find, you know, leisure in the outside space, whether, you know, what the linkage is between where you live and outside. You know, it's trying to push the boundaries of design quality and push the boundaries of affordability all the time.
I agree with that.
Robert, do you want to say anything on that, or Francine?
From my side, definitely affordability is very interesting. Cost is very interesting. We seem to value things on monetary cost. But what would happen if we carry on only building with concrete and not adapting our architecture to weather the storm of the climate ecological breakdown? We're all going to die. So that affordability and that cost is very interesting. Invest in your proposals and your ideas so that you can create a world where we have sustainable housing. That will not be as affordable as just giving people the most cost-effective construction methods that are horrific and does not elevate them to be able to provide for themselves in this time of need. So that's an excellent question, Karishma. And yes, absolutely, take it with a pinch of salt and have a strategy.
Okay, I see Robert's also wanting to respond. Thanks.
No, again, I think it's an excellent question because it is, you're right, it can be, it is and can be a major barrier. I think the way to look at it is to say affordability isn't just about getting access to the house, affording to be able to rent it or buy it. It's about what more can you get in terms of value, affordability in terms of all the elements around that, which is part of what I think has been looked for here in the design. I'm not one of the judges, I'm not set up the competition, but it does seem to me that looking at the site and thinking about some of the questions and issues you've been raising, that if it's an attractive location with services close by and it's appealing to people, then affordability is more than just what you pay in the initial cost for the house. And in some ways that raises the bar a little bit, allows you to, as Francine said, to question it in a different way. And I would encourage you to think about that. Of course, it is a barrier. I mean, if you can't afford to get to the housing, so it's got to be affordable at one level, but it's in terms of the rent and basic cost. But affordability could be a bit more than that if you wanted it to be. Just a thought for you all.
Okay. I thank you. I think we've got quite a mix of responses. So I hope what everybody's picking up is that one of the kind of key things that you need to do is that if you find a term, a criteria, something like affordability, the best thing to do is to really interrogate it yourself, and as part of your group with your tutors, and define what you think this means. Because that's going to shape your response. And as you've heard from the responses, affordability can be interpreted differently. And there are ways of thinking about it in terms of sustainability. There's ways of thinking of it in terms of life cycle costing. Ways of thinking about it from household incomes is that if a particular solution reduces a whole set of costs related to transport, to energy, to water, there's more money for other things. So there's a kind of whole way of kind of thinking through affordability. But in your response, make those issues explicit in the way you present the ideas back. So thank you for a good question, Karishma. Any follow up on that? Does that more or less answer your question? Is that okay? Any other? I think we're starting to run out of questions. Yeah. So if anybody else, there's a new one.
Yeah, we have a question here from Victor. Prof. Bob, the link, we do need that link to the SharePoint. I would have shared it, but I currently do not have that link to the SharePoint. So perhaps if you are unable to put it in the chat, perhaps you could quickly email it on to me, and then I can put it on the chat for the people. That might be
Yeah, I'll try and do that.
Okay, so look out on the chat for the URL.
Yeah, for the URL.
Let me just have a look and see if there's any more questions. Okay, I think Talisha has shared a link to a Google Drive, so that might be the one that everyone's looking at?
That is
Looking
the
for?
one with the site photos. I've just opened it. What we're specifically looking for is the SharePoint that Prof. Bob has in his presentation, where the presentation.
I'm just emailing it to you, Francine.
Prof?
Francine, I'm just emailing it to you now.
Thank you so very much. And then I'll quickly put it on the chat. If anybody hears clicking, that's me. Let me just mute myself quickly. But before I go, please, more questions, folks. We do love the questions. We have a few more minutes.
Okay, so I think we're reaching the end of the questions. I think a couple of things just to say that that we can pick up on. One is to be explicit about your thinking. So be upfront and very clear about your interpretation, and then show how you resolve that in a design. And share that it can be through diagrams, it can be through words, it can be through numbers, tables that show different approaches. You can do diagrams that show flows, show options, and then show how that results in your particular design and how you've developed a response that you would be the optimal response to that particular issue. Okay, there's a new message.
Can I just add to that, Jeremy, in that I think sometimes in architectural projects, people get a bit obsessed about the final product, the final solution, and I think it's much more about, in this case, the ideas and the processes and the priorities and those kinds of things. Rather, I mean, it's good to see a solution, but it's all those kind of aspects that build up to the solution that we're keen on. Francine, have you received that link to Gmail?
Okay,
I have received a link from you, but I cannot access it. I do need the URL link. So I have received
that's the only link I've got. But if you click on to the first slide, it does work.
I actually don't have access to your slides, as I don't have access to the SharePoint. But I have emailed Go, and I will ask Go.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to sort this out.
But we will get there. We definitely will get there. Folks, I apologize about the fact that we are unable to give you the SharePoint link. I understand that you can all access the Gmail Google files. So should the share link not work, I will make a file on Google Drive where the site photos are, and I will give you all access and email it through to everyone. And then the recordings will be placed on there, and the PowerPoints will be placed on there, as well as the SharePoint, so that everyone has access and fair access. So that's one way that we can solve it. Sorry about that, but technical difficulties across continents do happen.
It won't.
I would like to ask a kindness while Prof. Bob is busy. Is there any chance that some of the participants or all of the participants would be willing to put on their videos so that I can take a screenshot for the CIB and for LinkedIn?
Yeah.
If it is possible.
Just to cut in on that moment, Francine, can everybody see the first slide now?
We can.
Yeah. So this is the only link I've got, is this one.
And if you click on it, Prof. Bob, does it open a internet browser of some sorts, like Google or Internet Explorer?
Oh God, I've lost it now.
Because if it does that URL, if we could have that URL, then that would be great.
Yeah, it opened when I did it before.
However, Google Drive does work. So I'm happy to make a Google Drive for it as well.
There we go. That's what happens.
What happened, Prof. Bob?
Can you see that?
Not at all.
Huh?
It's okay. We'll make a Google Drive.
It says at the top here, you are screen sharing, but obviously not.
No,
Oh, how annoying.
it's okay. We'll sort it. It's a technical difficulty.
Yeah.
But we'll get the links out to everyone. In the interim, perhaps one screenshot with all the faces on. If you're willing, you don't have to show your face. You can also show a book. Hey, look at all the people. Hello, everyone. Look at all the smiling faces. Thank you so much, folks. This is wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. Look at all these faces. People, you are going to change the world. And we're starting. Look at that. Anke is actually 4 people. Look at that. Folks, thank you so very much.
Oh, so they are. Yes.
They are 4
Hello, 4 people.
Anke is part of a quadruple there. Fantastic, folks. This is lovely to see. I'm quickly taking a few screenshots. Please, if you can, join the CIB, join the commissions. It comes highly recommended, especially if you're interested in research, especially if you're interested in changing the world. Look at that. Oh, folks, it's good to see you. And it's good to see that we haven't been talking to random, you know, with machines these days, anyone could have logged on as a robot. Thank you so very much. With your permission, I'm going to post this on LinkedIn and it will be on the website page as well. Thank you very much. Anke, you are especially interesting. Look at that. There's a few with caps on. Everyone's freezing. I have a fire going. Thank you so very, very much. Do we have any questions before we end off? And I open a profile for everyone. I'll
try one more time to see if I can get this.
Thanks, Prof. There was another group of 4 or 5 there now. Oh, there's a Shyam is also 3 people. Let me see how many groups we have. It's lovely to see people.
So this screen sharing is not working, obviously, because you can't see it. No.
I can see your PowerPoint, Prof. Bob, but I cannot see
right.
when you press that link. It's
so that's the link. And it does work. It does come to the SharePoint.
Not for the rest of us, sadly. It's only for you, Prof. Bob.
So you can only see the the PowerPoint, can you? You can't see when it goes to the SharePoint.
That's correct, Prof. Bob. I see Freddie is also 2 people. Look at that. And Niku Kululu is also 3 people.
There's a group here that are slightly out of focus, but oh, I see Freddie. Yes, hello, Freddie.
Freddie times 2. Thank you so much, folks. It is lovely to see all your lovely faces.
Yeah. So is there anything else before we come to an end?
I can stop recording, and if there are no more questions, students, folks, studio masters, and general people interested in sustainability, we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Yes, we'll be on with the next workshop in a couple of weeks' time. So I hope to see you all then.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. Thanks. Cheers.
Okay.
Bye-bye.